good people, lend me your ears. For this week, I'm covering sound effect cues, an aspect of the game that I don't believe I have heard anyone else talk about, and I think that might be because it's a very simple concept, and it's probably a little more important to me than other people. I love music in general, create a good amount of it, played in lots of bands, and went to college to study audio, so I can't help but pay attention to a video game's soundtrack and sound design. I think for today's examples, I'll go ahead and play the clip once without saying anything, and then I'll go ahead and replay it and then break it down. So I apologize, but just for this week, I'm not going to have any type of background music because I want you to be able to hear stuff clearly as much as possible, which will inevitably result in some weird sounding edits that don't quite mesh together as nicely as I'd like them, but that's more my problem than yours anyway. So let's get into my first gripe and what I consider the worst piece of advice the game ingrains in players. Can you tell me the difference between these two approaches? And no, the answer is not one is faster than the other. Okay, so with today's topic in mind, one is incredibly louder than the other. Listen again. I feel this little bit is solely responsible because they make no mention of the extra sound you produce. It needs that warning you'll see in lots of horror games where they tell you to be careful when you sprint because it creates loud noise to give away your location to monsters or murders or whatever's chasing you. And you might be saying, okay Brett, I hear you, and I heard that, but so what? A little extra splashing never hurt anybody. Well, let me show you something else. I can get so many free splats all because I can hear people coming. And if I'm able to see or hear any actions before people start climbing and make even more noise, that just even further reinforces my knowledge of your intent to quickly climb up something and you're not gonna let anything stop you. Using terms we've discussed on this channel so far, I can easily predict what my opponents are going to do and easily position myself to execute on a free splat, all because I can hear you. And I'm sure it genuinely comes off as a surprise to some people how ready I am for them when I'm just sitting over here like...
You didn't see that coming?
This is probably the best clip I can use to highlight this. One, it showcases how obnoxiously loud Stingray is, but that aside, you get the difference between how audio and visual can be better than just one or the other. The first squid, while they did produce some noise, they didn't fully mash on the jump button non-stop and altered their time of arrival to the top. That very much caused hesitation on my end, as I wasn't quite sure when to expect them, but nor did I see them, so I had to go purely off of auditory cues that were a bit inhibited by the Stingray, and not overly loud from excess jumping. Caused me to mess up my execution and leads to their survival, so they passed the test. This next squid, I'm in a better position overall, so I can easily see them, and they used a few shots, and I'm not 100% sure whether those were used to try and hit me, or just to paint the wall. Either way, that leads me to believe they're going to be climbing up here soon, And they're also feeding me some extra audio information by claiming, and very loudly, so I feel way more confident on where and when to hit them. So they don't pass the test. I personally cannot play this game without game audio, and I feel partially blind whenever I attempt to. There's so much valuable information feedback I get from what I hear. And of course there's some obvious ones like ballers rolling around, or inkjets firing shots. And even basic weapons you can detect and identify based on their shot patterns and tones when you become familiar enough. Proximity is another bit of information sound gives you. The further away something is, the quieter it is. And while making this episode, I stumbled on Splatoon's interesting take on sound perspective, and I'll demonstrate with a sprinkler, and I'm mainly trying to use it while it's running at full power, as that's when it's loudest. So here it is in all of its glory as normal. Here, I'm going to move away from it, and of course it gets quieter. So it gets interesting here that as I get the sprinkler off my screen, it gets quiet, even though I'm positioned close enough to where it should be louder than it is. I even try it without moving and simply panning my screen, and I still get volume differences, which tells me, unless you're looking at something visibly on your screen, you won't be able to hear it as well. While I can't even consider it a revelation of sorts, I just found it neat that your hearing can be dictated by the framing of your screen, and it will sometimes overrule proximity. That does give a little insight into those sneaky little auto bombs, which are fairly quiet in their approaches, and also go completely silent for a few brief moments right before they explode. But if you're not even framing them on your screen, it's no wonder they can catch so many people by surprise. One maybe less obvious sound relation is swimming and the Ninja Squid ability. While it does a bit to hide you visually, it does absolutely nothing to mask your sound. So if you don't possess the eye to see those pesky Ninja Squid users, you can still track them purely off of the sound they're making. You can always hear swimming at high speeds. So let's play a fun game of Do You Hear? To see how much your auditory senses have improved. Listen closely now. Do you hear the roller? Do you hear the slosher? Do you hear the inzap? Do you hear the splatter shot? Do you hear the ink brush? With how pretty straightforward this concept is, I honestly don't have much more grand insight on the matter. but just wanted to be able to have people see what I hear. And I'm by no means saying you should never jump to climb walls. If you're making a quick escape, then yeah, smash that jump button like your life depends on it, as you've already been discovered anyway. But if you're moving to a position where you think someone might be, but you just have no way of proving someone isn't there, and you're not in a hurry, slow and steady should probably be your mantra. But that's all for this week's video. This has been the Gingerbread Man, and you certainly haven't heard the last of me. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Do you hear the Tentatek?
Nope. Yep.